Everybody, how you doing? It's Matt Slick Live, and in the studio today we have David Wood. He's an expert on Islam, and get ready for a good set of discussions.
This is Matt Slick Live with your host, Matt Slick, my hero, founder of CARM.org, the Christian Apologetics Research Ministry. Call now with your questions, Bible questions, God questions, hard questions. Toll free across the nation, 877-207-2276. That's 877-207-2276. No fluff, straight answers. And now, your full contact theologian. Here's Matt Slick.
Everybody, how are you doing out there? It is a beautiful Monday. It's October 8th, 2012 for the podcasters, and I'm your host, Matt Slick, and you are listening to Matt Slick Live. And if you are new to the show, this is my real name. It's not a fake radio name. It's my real name. Born with that name, learned to run as a kid because of it. Now, we are going to be discussing something all week except for Friday when I do hate mail because David Wood is in the studio. Dave, hi.
Hey, how's it going, man?
Are you embarrassed? Are you shy or something?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Matt Slick.
Now, Dave is an expert on Islam, okay? I know Islam pretty well, but I know nothing compared to him. And this other guy named Sam was supposed to be in. I was telling you guys out there in Radio Land that Sam and Dave would be in here. And Sam couldn't make it, just the way it is. It's by God's sovereignty. So, Dave, I hope you can handle it.
Oh, I think I can more than handle it.
Think you can more than handle it? Okay. Yeah, Dave knows his stuff. Now, folks, just to let you know that what we're going to do is we're going to be blabbing about Islam and stuff like that. And if you got questions about Islam, the Quran, the Hadith, you want to know about Muhammad, the various different divisions within Islam, salvation, bring it on. You can call up. The number is 377-3790. If you want to get in via Skype from anywhere on the planet, all you got to do is type in CARM.org. If you want to dial toll free, the number is 877-207-2276. But most people like to get in just direct, 377-3790. Let's try and keep our discussions and topics to the issue of Islam, because I can do all kinds of stuff. But, you know, let's be polite and take care of our guest here. Dave, thanks for coming in.
No problem.
Dave is a talker. He is a talker.
I wait for your cue. I don't want to dominate the discussion, man.
No, that's what you're here for.
Okay.
That's what you're here. I know you can do that.
How do you want to start? What do you want to go?
Well, we'll start by doing an intro. Now, we first met on the set of ABN SAT, I don't know, a year or two ago, whatever, and did some TV stuff out there in Michigan.
Yep.
Michigan. And this is the second time we've really met. We only met that one time. Was that one day or 2 days? I don't remember.
Something like
whatever.
A day or two.
Yeah. And so here we are. Here we are. So he's been out here you got here Sunday.
Yeah.
Today's Monday. Yesterday. Yesterday?
Was it? Yeah.
Man.
Seems like forever.
Seems like a long time. Man. Time's dragging. Boy, it's laboriously bad. Okay. So he's smiling. You can't see that on the radio, but he is smiling. So what we're going to do is talk about Islam. There's a lot of stuff. What we're going to be doing, just so you guys know, is he's out here to shoot videos. We're going to be producing a lot of video work. Our video room is done, and we're going to be doing that starting even tonight. Now, also, Wednesday, what we're going to do is... Hold on, excuse me, I had to clear my throat there. Wednesday at the Crossing Church, normally I teach on soteriology, the doctrine of salvation. Well, Dave is going to be there, and we're going to have Dave talk on Islam. So I'll probably just do an intro, and maybe I'll sit in the front row and ask stupid questions like, how do you spell Islam? And then we'll see how he does. And I'll just, sit and slap my forehead a lot, see if it distracts him. And if you want to come on out there, all you got to do, 7 p.m. Wednesday. I'll be promoting this today and tomorrow on Wednesday. 7 p.m. Wednesday, all you got to do is take the freeway out there to exit 36 in Nampa. And get off there, go north 3/4 of a mile. On the left-hand side is the Crossing Church. I'll be there, Lord willing. Dave will be there, Lord willing. And seriously, now I goof around, but Dave really does know his stuff. He really does. So he's like Bill McKeever in Mormonism and me in being obstreperous. He is very knowledgeable, and he can answer most every question there is about Islam. And if you can't, we have another guy on the beck and call. We have several guys who know stuff about Islam. Is that pretty good?
Yeah.
That's good?
Yeah. Except for the use of the word obstreperous.
Obstreperous?
Yeah.
Do you know what that means? means boisterously recalcitrant.
You must have rocked your SAT.
Well, I never took SAT test. However, I got my woman by using words like this. I remember once on a date I said, "Hey, baby, you want to circumambulate a well-fenestrated edifice while curtailing our relative fascinations? We can contemplate and then cogitate afterwards. What do you think?" And she said, "I don't know if I should slap you or give you a hug. What did you say?" And what I said was, "Do you want to walk slowly around a building with lots of windows in it while we're thinking about things, then we can smooch?" That's what I said. You talk like that, and plus you use words like hypostatic union, communicatio idiomatum, things like that. Girls just go, "Oh, that's so nice and masculine and so intelligent." They don't talk like that.
I have a lot of respect for your wife there, Matt.
And sympathy.
Yeah.
She's a good woman, except for taste in men. Okay, let's get on the topic. All right, Dave. Rich from Boise, hold on. We're going to get you in here a little bit. Dave, so where do you live?
I live in the Bronx. You want my home address for any Muslims that might be listening?
I don't think it's a good idea. I don't want to get too much about the family and stuff like that, but you got a family, I know that. Now, how long have you been studying Islam?
I actually started studying Islam before I started studying Christianity. So back in the atheist days, back in, I guess, 94, 95 range, started studying Islam. Not too in-depth back then, but got the basics down back then. Later on, after I became a Christian, I had a weightlifting partner who was a Muslim imam. So, and I hadn't been a Christian very long. I hadn't even gotten to the parts of the New Testament talking about being nice and stuff. So we're
nice parts.
Yeah, we're lifting weights and arguing about Christianity and Islam, and it was like no holds barred, right? I mean, I'm telling him every new thing I would learn about his prophet, I would jump all over it and stuff. And so there's testosterone all over the place. A few months later, we weren't friends anymore. Haven't spoken.
Is that why you look like that? Because he dropped some weights on you?
Yeah.
I'm just checking.
And so it was actually a few years later. My best friend was a Muslim named Nabil, and he actually started it. He said, "So are you a hardcore Christian?" And I said yes. And so we started arguing. And he told me all about Christianity. I didn't know. Look, I came from an atheist background. I've been through all this, right? I've been through all these objections here, and so started studying things with him, and actually took several years of us having some really hardcore discussions on Christianity. We eventually got to Islam and looked into the Quran and Muhammad, and Nabil is actually a Christian apologist now. And but I mean, the reason I was studying Islam during that time was just because my best friend was a Muslim. And I've wondered, what if my best friend back then had been like a Mormon or something like that? Maybe I'd be involved in, studying, responding to Mormonism or something like that. But he was a Muslim, and when he became a Christian, I actually thought, cool, now I'm done with Islam. Now I can get back to responding to atheists and so on. But right after he converted, he started getting challenges to defend his conversion from Muslims who thought he was dumb for converting. And so we started getting debate challenges pretty quickly, and so never actually got away from Islam because it's been nonstop. I think I've done, 34, 35 debates on Islam now over the years, and it's fun. And you look around kind of at the global situation, and it's certainly an important topic. And I look at lots of Christians who are going into apologetics are focusing on, Richard Dawkins-esque, the new atheists and stuff like that. And I don't think there are enough people involved in Islam. And so when I think about what's needed, I'm focusing on a lot on Islam right now.
There's 1,000 questions I could ask, and so I'm trying to think what direction to go, because Islam is a very important topic, and it's growing in America. And in my opinion of Islam is it's a highly dangerous religion, very dangerous because of what it teaches. Maybe we'll get into that, but this might be a good time to just kind of get into the issue of what Rich, the caller, wants to ask. And so let's get Rich on the phone. Hey, Rich, are you there?
Yes, I am.
All right, Rich. So what do you got, man?
I wanted to bring this up for discussion. The last couple of weeks I've been thinking, and it's a scary thought, but since Islam is really the antithesis of America and American culture, that should consider banning Islam from this country as a means of protecting America. And I'm going to get off the phone and listen to you guys on the air.
Okay. Hey, thanks a lot, Rich. Really appreciate that. What do you think?
Okay, thank you.
Well, yeah, I on the one hand, I can see why someone would make that claim about Islam and not about other positions. And for your listeners who don't know a lot about Islam, Islam is not a religion like other religions. It is a combination religion and political ideology. In fact, if you read the Muslim sources, it seems like most of it is political ideology with religious overtones. There are clearly calls for, in the Quran and in the Hadith, for Muslims to subjugate other people and to establish an Islamic government. And so you take Surah 929 of the Quran, for instance, it commands Muslims to fight those who do not believe, and it specifically mentions Jews and Christians in that verse, and commands Muslims to violently subjugate us until we feel ourselves subdued, and so until we understand that we are second-class citizens. And that's Christians and Jews. We actually have a comparatively good position in Islam when you compare us with polytheists or pagans or atheists, for instance. If you're a polytheist or something like that, you are supposed to convert or die. If you're a Christian or a Jew, you have the option of becoming a dhimmi, which is a second-class citizen. So if you look at Islam, it demands the establishment of Sharia, or Islamic law. And so when you're talking about Islam, since Islam has this political component, here in the United States, we have the Constitution, we have the Bill of Rights, and Islam teaches the exact opposite of what the Constitution teaches. And for instance, you take something like freedom of speech or freedom of religion. Islam says some things about that just don't fit in with basic American values. And so, I see why someone would say, well, since Islam is radically against basic American values, should it be outlawed? And the problem with that is you have kind of a spectrum. And what I mean there is your average Muslim doesn't know anything that I just told you. He doesn't know much about Islam. And I think it's strange that Muslims have a reputation. I don't know how they got this reputation, but Muslims have a reputation as people who are really familiar with the Quran and so on. And I'll tell you, I have trouble finding Muslims who know anything about the religion. I've talked to imams. I've talked to Muslim imams, so mosque leaders, and I'll start bringing up names or passages. They have no clue what I'm talking about because they don't know what's in their sources. You have Muslim scholars who have gone through the Quran and the Hadith and the Tafsir and the Muslim sources, and they know what Islam is, but it's a very divided world. In Islam, what you really have on the ground is you have the Muslim scholars, and then you have you have your average Muslims, and they are taught, come to the mosque on Friday, do your prayers daily, but other than that, you just do what your leaders tell you. Not go and study a religion and know it inside and out. You just do what your leaders tell you to do. And so your average Muslim doesn't really know much of anything about conquering America and taking out, and replacing it with Sharia law and stuff like that. And so to outlaw Islam, I don't know how you would do this, how you would outlaw kind of official Islam, which does call for the violent subjugation of non-Muslims, and just kind of what the whitewashed Walt Disney version of Islam that most Muslims actually believe in. I don't know how you distinguish that. And so I'd be against any kind of ban on Islam unless someone has some idea of how to distinguish between Islam and kind of Islam light. But on the other hand, I don't think we need to. I think if Christians would do their job and learn about Islam, the Bible commands us to be apologists, and when you look around at our main competitors in the world, Islam has around 1.5 billion adherents out there. So we certainly need to learn about Islam. I think if Christians would learn about Islam and we actually spread the word about what Islam teaches, so that the facts about Muhammad and the Quran became common knowledge, I don't think Islam would be spreading at all. I don't think anyone would be converting to Islam. And I say that with plenty of basis. I've met plenty of converts to Islam. I've talked to plenty of converts of Islam. I hear from them all the time. And I've never, to this day, I have never met someone who converted to Islam after doing a careful study of Islam. And these converts to Islam, when I tell them about Islam, they have no clue what I'm talking about because they didn't hear about what Islam really teaches. They didn't hear about how Muhammad actually was. They didn't hear about what's actually in the Quran. They heard a message that was tailored for Western listeners. What is going to make a Western listener like Islam? And so that, Muslims come up to people in the West and they say, hey, you believe in women's rights? Islam, Muhammad was a champion of women's rights. Oh, you believe in peace and tolerance? Islam is a fount of peace and tolerance. You like this stuff? Oh, you like science? The Quran is a scientific masterpiece. Absolute total nonsense, and this is the basis for people converting. And so if you follow that, if we could actually get to the point where people across the country know about Islam, I don't think we're going to have much of a problem with Islam. And I think we see a lot of people leaving Islam, not necessarily becoming Christians. Some of them would, but even people who don't become Christians, I don't think they're going to take Islam seriously. And so I think Islam would cease to be a problem if accurate information about Islam actually got out there.
Hey, that's good. Hey, folks, if you want to call, the number is 377-3790. We have David Wood in the studio. He runs. You just do this full time? I was going to ask you that, and I never got to. We kept talking about everything else.
I try to. I do other stuff. I would like to.
Okay. How can people contact you?
They can go to my blog, answeringmuslims.com.
Answeringmuslims.com.
Yeah, that'd be the easiest way to find me. That's what I keep updated most.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the issues here with Islam, the basics. Now, how did it begin?
Well, a Muslim would tell you, and this is the kind of official Muslim position, Islam has always been around, right? So, there was Islam in heaven in the sense that there was God and angels, and, the angels are good Muslims. The angels and the jinn are kind of a different kind of spirit being from angels. But you already had Islam there, and then, according to Islam, Adam was a Muslim, Abraham was a Muslim, Moses was a Muslim, Jesus was a Muslim. So that would be the beginnings of Islam, according to what Islam teaches. Now, from a historical perspective, Islam began with Muhammad. So, for a basic timeline here, Muhammad was born around 570 A.D. So Jesus dies, in the around 30 or 33, somewhere in there, and Muhammad comes along more than 5 centuries later. So Muhammad is born around 570. He's about 40 years old. He's about 40 years old when he receives his first revelation. So he's in a cave, fasting and praying, and he gets his first revelation telling him to read in the name of his Lord. And, Muhammad himself was freaked out by this. He actually thought he was demon-possessed and tried to hurl himself off a cliff. But he went home, and his wife Khadijah and her cousin Waraka convinced Muhammad that he's not possessed, he's actually a prophet of God. And so over the next 22, 23 years or so, Muhammad continues to receive revelation. So between the year 610, when he receives his first revelation, and 632, when he dies, Muhammad receives revelations that are supposedly the direct word of Allah. His followers eventually collected all of those revelations and put them into a book, and that book is the Quran. So if you want to know what the Quran was, it is the collection of revelations that supposedly came from Allah through the angel Gabriel to Muhammad, and then Muhammad delivered them to his followers, and they're collected in the book, in the Quran. So that's when Islam started. So you're talking 7th century A.D.
Okay.
In Arabia.
In Arabia.
Yeah.
Where's Arabia?
Well, it's in the Middle East, and it's the big country on the bottom, and that's where Mecca is, Medina, the
Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, Saudi Arabia.
Okay. Hold on one second. Sorry to clear my throat. Sorry about that, folks. We got a question in the chat room, but folks, if you want to call, the number is 377-3790. I'm your host, Matt Slick. You're listening to Matt Slick Live. We have David Wood in the studio here with us. We're discussing Islam. We'll be discussing it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. All right, we'll be getting back onto hate mail on Friday, and so if you hate me, send me some hate mail. I love it. Okay,
I'm going to send you some.
Yeah, you know me now, so you know. Okay, Dave. Here's a question from the chat room. Does Dave know what percentage of Muslims adhere to the radical form of it, or at least approve of those who carry it out at a minimum? It seems very few Muslims ever condemn the murder and criminal actions taken by others in their belief system, even if they don't do those things themselves.
Yeah, there have been statistics in various places, and there have been some collections. I'm trying to pull one up now because I actually have some of the statistics. But just as a general idea, for instance, a study was done in the UK. And it was found that out of all the people who would claim to be Muslims there, roughly 15% were totally kind of liberal, right? They might go to the mosque. If they go to the mosque, it's for a holiday, for a special Muslim holiday or something. But basically, they're totally secular. They're Islam in name only. You had around 70%, so around 70%, the big bulk of the Muslims there. And they were, they believed in Islam, they took it seriously, but, they're basically in the West to have a job, to work, to make a better life for their kids. They don't care about, establishing Islam over anyone else or anything else like that. So they are sincere. They sincerely believe in Islam. They don't know a tremendous deal about it, and they're living normal lives. And then you had around 15% who were the Muslims who said, hey, when it comes time to die for jihad, that's what I'm going to do. So around 15%. Now, if we took that, so this is the UK. If we took that if we thought that was the average in the world, okay, 15% are the more radical kind of Muslims, you're still talking about 15% of 1.5 billion people. That is a lot of radical people there. But of course, you can't take the UK as any kind of model, and so I'm going to give you kind of an overview of statistics. These are from various studies, various polls that have been done from around the Muslim world, and I just took kind of a selection and put them together. 15% of American Muslims under age 30 believe that suicide attacks in defense of Islam are sometimes justified. So 15% of American Muslims, these Muslims in America who are under 30, so college-age Muslims.
How many Muslims are there in America?
Depends on who you ask. Most non-Muslim sources would say somewhere between 2 and 4 million. I've seen Muslim sources claim as high as 9 million, as high as a population of 9 million. But I would say 3 or 4 million here. So roughly 1% of the population in the United States. But of those few million Muslims, 15% say of the Muslims under 30 say that suicide attacks are at least sometimes justified. Not always, but sometimes. A third of British Muslim students, so college-age people, a third, now that's a lot, a third of British Muslim students believe that killing in the name of Islam is sometimes justified. 40% of British Muslim students want the UK to adopt Sharia. And so the reason this is a concern is you find actually a bit more radicalization among the younger generation of Muslims than in the older generation. They were immigrants, right? They were coming to the West specifically to, get a better life, get better jobs, but their children are growing up, and their children are sometimes taking Islam a bit more seriously. Roughly a quarter of British Muslims say that the 7/7 attacks were justified. So that was after 9/11 when the British trains were blown up and so on. A quarter of British Muslims say it's justified because the UK was involved in war in Iraq and so on. 68%, and this is what should start concerning people, because now you're dealing with a majority here. Now you're dealing with a majority. 68% of British Muslims support the arrest and prosecution of anyone who insults Islam. We hear about the tiny minority of Muslim extremists. We're talking 68% of British Muslims. So if you walk up to a British Muslim and say, do you support the arrest and prosecution of anyone who insults Islam? Chances are he's going to say yes.
And how many Muslims are in the UK?
Actually, more than the United States, which it's a much smaller. Not sure there. I think that I saw. I'm not sure I can believe it, but I saw that there are over 1 million Muslims in the London area now, and that's a lot. When I've been over there for debates, you can go to certain areas, and all the signs are in Arabic. The business signs and stuff are in Arabic. Right in London. You walk down the street, and it's all. Women. Every woman you see is in a burqa or at least a hijab and so on. And so, if you just woke up and you didn't know where you were, you'd say, "Oh, I'm in Mecca here," or something like that. So lots there, and sort of around the world in different countries. You have 55% of Muslims in Jordan have a positive view of Hezbollah, that's a terrorist organization. 49% of Egyptians have a positive view of Hamas, another organization. 59% of Indonesian Muslims. Indonesia is the biggest, has the biggest Muslim population in the world. So it's not a country in Arabia, it's Indonesia actually, an Asian country. 59% of Indonesian Muslims supported Osama bin Laden in 2003. They took a poll. Do you support Osama bin Laden? 59%, over half. And the reason this is strange is, again, we're not dealing with a tiny minority of extremists. If you watch the media and you heard about this tiny minority of extremists, you think a small fraction of 1% would believe in these radical ideas, and you start looking at the percentages, and you're dealing with 20, 30, 40, sometimes 60, 70, 80% of the population of Muslim countries, sometimes even non-Muslim countries, believing these things. For instance, 78% of Pakistanis support killing apostates. That's 8 out of 10. 8 out of 10 Pakistanis say yes, if someone leaves Islam, he has to die. Turkey, they did a poll. And Turkey was one of the most liberal Muslim countries out there, one of the most moderate Muslim countries. But over 30% of Muslims in Turkey said that suicide attacks against the West are justified. If you remember, the Fogel family was a Jewish family, and Muslims went in and slaughtered the entire family, a baby, little girl, everything, just slaughtered the family. A third of Palestinians were polled, and they said that they supported the killing, the slaughter of an entire family. And so, the numbers are actually scary, and we have to start kind of demanding the media quit telling us about this tiny minority. When it is a minority, it's not a tiny minority. It's 15, 20, 30, 40%. Those aren't tiny minorities. Tiny minority is like 1%, and sometimes it's majority. So, certainly some scary trends worldwide with Islam.
It's disturbing. I've studied Islam for a few years, off and on, and I know enough about it and the people I've encountered. I'm not trying to put fear in everybody's hearts, but I'm quite concerned about what's happening here in America. Now, with these kind of statistics in England, which we have a lot of information there from there, it's moving into America. The same kind of a thing is here. I remember hearing a TV show once, just a couple, 3, maybe 4 months ago. At any rate, this guy was giving the statistics, and I forget what book it was. When there's a certain population of Muslims in a country, certain kinds of things occur. And the higher the percentage, the worse things get for the natives, to the point of being persecuted, killed, ostracized, and things like this. I know it's bad news, but anyway, so...
by the way, on that, because that is an extremely important point, and we call it the 3 stages of jihad. And this goes back to Muhammad himself, and it goes back to the example set by Muhammad. It's laid down in the Quran. It's in the Hadith. It's in the Tafsir.
What's the Hadith? What's the Quran and what's the Hadith?
Okay. The Quran, we mentioned earlier, the Quran is a collection of revelations that were given to Muhammad from Allah. So it's not the word of Muhammad at all. It's not Muhammad talking in this book. These are the words of Allah that were revealed to Muhammad. So the entire book is supposedly the word of Allah, the direct word of Allah.
It'd be kind of compared to then a book full of the words of Jesus and only Jesus. Because it's directly from God, His words.
And even if you wanted to take Jesus out of the equation, because Muslims would say he's a prophet, just something like the Ten Commandments or something like that.
Right.
So that's the Quran. It's not supposed to be about Muhammad. The only thing that's about Muhammad is that some of these revelations were revealed in a certain historical context that had to do with Muhammad. So that's a source, an authoritative source of Muslim doctrine, but it's not the only source, because Muhammad is the prophet, and so his teachings, what he actually said, and his deeds are actually authoritative as well. So things Muhammad went around saying and doing, those are authoritative for Muslims as well. And so those are collected in the hadith. The hadith aren't, it's not like a straightforward biography, like you open up a biography of George Washington or even the Gospels. The Gospels start out at some early point and they proceed kind of chronologically. The Quran itself isn't arranged chronologically. It's kind of arranged from longest to shortest. That was the arrangement. The chapters of the Quran. The hadith are arranged topically. So here are all of Muhammad's teachings on jihad, and the book will have all of those teachings. And here are all Muhammad's teachings on marriage, and it gives all the various things he did at various points in his prophetic career on marriage. So that's how they're arranged. And so that's the Quran and the Hadith, and they have a couple of other sources as well. The tafsir are Muslim commentaries on the Quran, and it's usually applying the Hadith to specific verses of the Quran. So here's a verse of the Quran, but here's the historical situation, so here's what we can figure out that this means. But they also have a different class, which is the Sirah. The Sirah literature, which are more straightforward biographies, as we would be familiar with a biography. So you open up Ibn Asak's Sirat Rasulullah. And
what was that?
The Sirat, so the Sirah, the Sirat Rasulullah, life of the Prophet Muhammad, basically. Mm-hmm. And so that is pretty much a straightforward biography. So if you're looking for an early Muslim biography of Muhammad, you'd want to get something like that. And it starts off, and here's Muhammad's early life, and here's what happened in the middle, and here's what happened at the end, and here's how he died, and these are the battles he fought, and so on. So those are the Muslim sources. What you find wherever you go, whether you go to the Quran or the Hadith or the commentaries or whatever, you find that jihad proceeds in stages. Jihad proceeds in stages. And so when Muhammad was a persecuted prophet in Mecca, the message he preached was peace and tolerance. Now, he was still criticizing the religious views of the pagans and so on, but at the end of the day, he's saying, hey, but let's not fight about this, let's not hurt one another, blah, blah, blah. So if you read revelations in the Quran that came down in this time, they're peaceful. They're the sorts of things, Westerners or Christians would look at and say, hey, that's pretty good stuff.
And that's often what's promoted.
Yes.
To Christians. See, we're peaceful.
Yeah. And that's and I'm going to get to that in a second. As far as what Muslims are saying in the West. So when Muhammad is a persecuted prophet, he has a couple dozen followers. It's, hey, let's all get along, peace and tolerance. Later on, when he left Mecca and he was able to form some alliances and he had other tribes from other places saying, hey, we'll protect you, then the message changed to what we could call defensive jihad. And there, it's Muslims can fight, and later on Muslims are obligated to fight if Islam is being attacked, if the Muslim community is being attacked or the Muslim community is being persecuted. It's important to keep in mind, though, that when you're reading the Quran, it talks about defending Islam from attacks. The Islamic concept of an attack is much broader than we think. We think of strictly military attacks or something like that. In Islam, it can be criticism, it can be making fun of Muhammad, it can be that sort of thing.
So our conversation here could be used by Muslims as a justification for jihad against us.
No question. I mean, I would have like thousands of death sentences against me, given all the things I've said about Islam over the years.
Do you? Ever been threatened?
Oh, yeah, all the time. We get threatened. The last one I saw, a Muslim said he's going to hang me and Robert Spencer's heads on the White House. So he's going to chop our heads off and hang them on the White House. Don't know how he's going to do that, but that's what he said he's going to do anyway. And no, matter of fact, there was one right after that where the guy said he was going to slaughter my entire family. He said, you and your family. So, interesting. But so you have this defensive jihad stage. We will fight you. We Muslims will fight you, but it's in response to something you've done. You're attacking the Muslim community somehow. You're attacking Islam somehow. And there are verses of the Quran revealed here saying if they attack you, if they do something to you, if they persecute you, then you can defend yourselves by fighting them. And lots of Muslims want to pretend that that's the end of the story, right? This is what the Quran teaches. We defend ourselves. But that's not the end of the story, according to Islam. Because later on, when Muslims dominate an area, in other words, when Muslims form the majority of a population, then the teachings change. And so what you have here is Surah 9, which is one of the last two surahs that were supposedly revealed to Muhammad. But the command in Surah 9, verse 29 is, fight those who believe not in Allah nor the last day. Notice, it's not fight people who are attacking you anymore. Fight those who do not believe. You're fighting people based on their beliefs. So fight those who believe not in Allah nor the last day, nor hold that forbidden which hath been forbidden by Allah and His Messenger, nor acknowledge the religion of truth, that's Islam, from among the people of the book, that's Jews and Christians, until they pay the jizya with willing submission and feel themselves subdued. And yeah, the jizya.
What's the jizya?
The jizya is, Muslims will call it a tax. It's not a tax. It's tribute. It's tribute paid to Muslims for the right of not being killed.
Non-Muslims.
Yes. So Jews and got to be a Jew or a Christian.
So a Jew and a Christian subdued in a Muslim land is allowed to exist peacefully as long as he pays this heavy tax.
Yes. So you have to pay this tribute to Muslims for the right of not being killed. That's your right as a Jew or a Christian, and they're not supposed to kill you.
Not supposed to.
Yeah.
But so what is the percentage?
And
how often?
This is very interesting because Muslims will say, oh, it's this small percentage, and they'll quote some Muslim source saying it's a small percentage, and they'll say, you see, this isn't bad, I mean, come on, you're under the protection of Islam and so on. But what you find in the actual Muslim sources is that it varies, and it's whatever Muslims can kind of get out of you, right? If you're poor people and you can't give much, okay, well then you give a small percentage. If they think they can get a lot more out of you, they can. For instance, there was a Jewish tribe, and they had to give 50% of their crops to Muslims. So that's a pretty high tax there. You're talking about half of what you produce in a year you have to give to the Muslims, and it would be a yearly collection. It's interesting. Some of the Muslim sources on how the jizya is to be collected will say that when the dhimmi, so the Jew or the Christian, comes forward, he has to come crawling on his hands and knees, and that the Muslim is supposed to either slap him on the back of the neck or grab him by the beard and hit him on his chin. And these are supposed to be constant reminders of our inferiority. So that's the collection. That's what, and when they go back and it says until they pay the jizya with willing submission and feel themselves subdued. We have to understand how horrible we are. We have to understand our inferiority. And just one more quotation on that note. Muhammad said, I've been ordered to fight people till they say, La ilaha illallah. That's, there is no God but Allah. And whoever says this, his life and property are safe from me. So you have to actually, Muhammad says he's been commanded to fight people until they recite the Shahada. So that's what happens at stage 3. Now, so what you have is Muhammad is in all these different situations in his life. When he's in a minority, peace and tolerance. When he doesn't have a majority, but he has enough to definitely defend himself, then it's defensive jihad. Don't mess with us. Don't criticize us, or we're coming after you. When he actually forms a majority, then everyone else has to submit. You're a Christian or a Jew, you become a dhimmi. If you're something else, you convert or die. That's what you find in the Muslim sources. And, I mean, this is really diabolical because this allows Muslims to come into places like the United States and say, Islam's all about peace and tolerance. You say, no, it's not. What about all the violence? No, look, I'll show you what the Quran says right here. It says right here in the Quran, Surah 2, there is no compulsion in religion. That's what Islam teaches. No, that's what Islam teaches in certain situations. And so what you have right now is you could kind of blindfold me right now. You could blindfold me and don't tell me the country. Don't tell me the country. Just tell me the percentage of Muslims in some country, in some random country. Tell me the percentage of Muslims in the country without actually telling me the country, and I will tell you what message Islam is preaching in that country. And the reason is, think about it. So you got these three stages. Muslims are in the minority, small minority, peace and tolerance. That would be someplace like the United States of America, where Muslims are around 1% of the population. What's the message here? Oh, Islam's all about peace. Islam's all about tolerance. That's what Islam teaches. Here, let us show you where the Quran says this. You go to certain places in Africa where Muslims are 20, 30, 40% of the population. They haven't subjugated everyone, but I guarantee you're not going to mess with Islam there. You're not going to offend a Muslim there. Or there's going to be some retaliation. That's defensive jihad. You go to places like Saudi Arabia or Egypt or Pakistan where you have a heavy Muslim majority. You are a second-class citizen, I can guarantee you. And Muslims can push you around. They can do what they want. And they're going to be free to do that. And if you look, that's exactly the same pattern that was laid down in the life of Muhammad. It's exactly the same pattern you find in the Quran. It's exactly the same pattern. And you could actually look around the world and say, wow, Muslims have done exactly what they're told to do on a large-scale basis. Not on the, you have your average Muslim. He probably doesn't know any of this. But somehow, Islam around the world has done exactly what it's supposed to do, according to Muhammad.
Yeah, I like to say it's a religion of peace. A piece of your arm, a piece of your leg. It's a religion of peace, all right. And some other ways I could use the word peace, but anyway, won't. So, okay, there's a lot to talk about. So Islam started back in right around 600, give or take. I mean, that's what people, just a generic kind of a number, around the year 600. It wasn't quite that's not an exact date, but that's close enough. By Muhammad. How old was he? You said 40?
He was 40 when he received his first revelation.
I always thought it was interesting that he received his revelation in darkness.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because when God speaks, there's light. And Jesus is the light that came into the world. And then we have the light of truth, and the Word of God is a light to our path. But Muhammad got it in darkness. I don't think that's an accident. I think it's revelation. Let me ask you just an opinion. There's no way to know this for sure. Do you really think he was receiving any sort of revelation? And obviously it wouldn't have been from God. Or do you think he was just making up as he goes, like Joseph Smith of Mormonism did?
Well, you kind of have a third possibility in there. You have one that he's actually making stuff up, right? I mean, he's conscious, right? This is a man who is aware of what he's doing. He's trying to start his own religion. Then you have a person can believe he's receiving revelation, but he's just crazy, right? You have he belonged in a mental hospital. There are mental patients who believe they're hearing from God or something like that. They're not really hearing from God. And then you have the possibility that he is receiving revelations. He's getting messages. Someone is speaking to him, but it's not God. And then, of course, the fourth possibility would be that he's actually receiving messages from God. That's definitely not the case. I actually think it's kind of a combination. I think it's a kind of a combination.
Of the first three.
Yeah, not so much with the.
It could be from the true God. It wouldn't be from the true God because God doesn't contradict himself. He wouldn't be getting anything from the true God.
No. The only places I would say there are true statements in the Quran. So, for instance, there's true statements. There are things, and it's basically stuff he got from other people. Right. So he heard the Christians talking about Jesus, and you open up the Quran, and hey, Jesus was born of a virgin. Jesus performed miracles, stuff like that. And it's hard to resist the idea that Muhammad was kind of inventing things. One of his wives, Aisha, even pointed it out. One of his wives, Aisha, was after Muhammad used to receive these kind of morally convenient revelations where he would want something and then he would get a revelation from Allah. So he lays down the rule in Surah 4:3, which says that Muslims can only have up to 4 wives. Later on, he gets a revelation saying he's the exception. He can get as many wives as he wants, right? Now, how convenient is that?
I'm going to remember that for the cult when I start mine.
Yeah. Oh, and these are great tips for those of you who want to start your own cults out there.
Oh, my wife didn't hear that. I'm in trouble.
Yeah, and so one day Muhammad sees the wife of his own adopted son. So his son Zayd has a wife named Zainab, who's one of the most beautiful women in Arabia. Muhammad sees her half naked. He starts praising Allah and stuff. And meanwhile, not long after that, Zayd divorces her, Muhammad marries her, and then the revelations came justifying the entire thing.
Why would this guy divorce this woman?
Well,
he was told to?
It doesn't look like he was told to, but he had such respect for Muhammad. It was, wow, if you like her that much, she's yours. And Muhammad said, no, go ahead and keep her. And he's like, no, Muhammad, if you want her, she's yours. And it actually became one of the Muslim obligations towards Muhammad is if Muhammad sees your wife and likes her, then you have to give her up. So Muhammad can have her. So Muhammad receives, some of them are interesting. The first couple of verses of Surah 66 talks about Muhammad. It doesn't give you the context. You have to go to the other Muslim sources to read the context. But it says that Muhammad can break his oaths. He doesn't have to break his oath. And if you look at the historical situation, Muhammad's wife, Hafsa, caught him in her bed sleeping with one of his slave girls. And she freaked out about it, and Muhammad took an oath that he would stop sleeping with his slave girls. And that's when, a little later, the revelation came down. Why have you forbidden for yourself what Allah hasn't forbidden? Why did you say you're not going to have sex with your slave girls anymore when Allah didn't tell you this? And so it allowed Muhammad to kind of go back on his word.
Okay, wait a minute. I got to write that down for my new cult. I'm going to start self-revelation. Exempts you from every... Yeah, I like that. Okay, good.
So what you have is Muhammad keeps receiving these very convenient revelations that kind of always give him what he wants. And one day, his wife Aisha, when he receives one of these revelations, says, your Lord hastens to satisfy your desires. And if you read about Aisha in the Muslim sources, she'll say exactly what she's thinking, right? In fact, Aisha is my favorite character in the Muslim literature. She's just a habitual trash talker. She'll say whatever she wants. She doesn't care if it's to Muhammad, right? And Muslims will actually look at that and say, yes, you see, Allah gave Muhammad whatever he wanted. And I'm looking at that going, do you guys understand what it's like to have a wife who's not scared of talking back to you, like Aisha wasn't? She's saying, isn't it convenient that anytime you want something, Allah gives you a revelation justifying it? And so it's very easy to say that Muhammad's making this up as he goes along to kind of get what he wants. But at the same time, I've never been able to really just buy completely into that position. And it's because he is going out in these various situations, these battles and so on, where his life is on the line, where he can get killed, and where people are trying to kill him. And he doesn't back down. He doesn't back down from his message. And so I'm applying the same standard that I would apply to Christianity, for instance. When I say, how do you know Jesus wasn't a liar? How do you know Paul wasn't a liar? Well, I look at them and say, as a general rule, if you're willing to die for something, you're not making it up, or you don't believe that you're making it up. And so, and by the way, this is why I became a Christian, right? I found out how the apostles died, and I sat there thinking, wow, if these apostles died like this for claiming that they had seen Jesus risen from the dead, I couldn't think of another person in all of history who made something up and was willing to just go down dying to where, you have the chance to change your views, and you don't. And I'm thinking, okay, even if you got one like that, even if you got one who's just out there and doesn't care and he'll make something up and then die for it, you're not going to get a whole group of people like that. And so I had to think, what did these guys see? What did these guys see that convinced them? And the difference between, someone dying today, like, because people say, well, Muslims today, blow up buildings and they're willing to die for that. Well, that's different. Those Muslims believed in Islam because they heard a message from someone else, and they were willing to die for that. I heard about Christianity from someone else. The apostles were dying for something they saw. They claimed that they had seen the risen Lord. And since they were all willing to die, I conclude, well, they've seen something. And the question then became, for me, when I was an atheist, what did they see? And the only explanation I could come up with is, well, they saw Jesus. That's the only thing that kind of explained the facts.
It made the most sense, right?
Yeah. But when I turn to Islam and I see Muhammad and his followers and so on, they're willing to go out there and they're willing to go into battle and they're willing to die and they're willing to be, and they're talking about getting martyred and they just want to get martyred. I think, all right, it wouldn't surprise me if Muhammad saw something. Now, when it comes to seeing something, he could either be, he could have a mental problem.
What about the epileptic theory?
Well, there are people who say that, and when you read some kind of the descriptions of his revelations, when he flops down on the floor and his face turns red and stuff like that, that's certainly possible.
Because I remember reading back in that culture at that time that someone who had some sort of a problem like epilepsy was often thought of as being in contact with God. Some weird things would happen to them. Just kind of superstition.
Yeah, they had all kinds of weird stuff.
Hey, folks, really quickly, We're talking to David Wood. He's an expert on Islam, and you're listening to Matt Slick Live. I'm your host, Matt Slick. Dave and I are going to be at the Crossing Church on Wednesday. I'm just going to intro him, and he's going to blab, and maybe we might have a little dialogue, but he's got plenty to say. So on Wednesday nights, that'll be in 2 days, okay? So it'll be the 11th of October. On Wednesday night, if you want to hear Dave, come on, it's free. Just come on out. There's no child care, but, come on out at 7 p.m. All you got to do is go out the freeway out there to exit 36, and that's in Nampa. Just go north 3/4 of a mile. On the left-hand side is the Crossing Church, and we'll be there this Wednesday at 7 if you want to come on out. Just come on out and check it out. So anyway, but if you want to call right now, you got a comment or a question, you want to ask Dave something, now's a good time. We're also going to be in here Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Dave will be in here. He's flying back home on Friday. The number is 377-3790. You can feel free to give me a call. All right. So, there's so many things we could talk about, and we can kind of rehash, because we could do it logically, do it by topic. But you know what? I'm just kind of enjoying just the discussions. So this issue of Muhammad, in the darkness of a cage, he might have been epileptic. There's no way to know for sure, but he had something. He either knew he was lying, or he was somehow self-deceived. Personally, I think that because he was involved in this, I believe...
Or his first impression was correct, right? I mean, keep in mind, his first impression was a demon was coming after him.
And that's what I was going to say is, personally, I believe that he was demon oppressed at the very least. He was opening his heart and mind up to lies, the lies of the enemy, denying Christ, denying the true God. And so, therefore, he's opening himself up to demonic possession, if not oppression. So I think that he was...
Yeah, and part of the reason I would say that is, if you look at what Muhammad taught, Muhammad agrees with Christians on lots of things. Matter of fact, let's go back. So you go to the book of Acts. You see the apostles go out in the book of Acts and they go around preaching. They always emphasize Jesus is Lord. He died on the cross for sins. He rose from the dead. Wherever they go, they center on that message. And so, we as Christians can look at and say, okay, out of all the stuff Jesus taught and did, what was the core of the gospel? And, well, that would seem to be what the apostles centered on. And then you even have, with the Apostle Paul,
right.
That's the definition. That's the
definition of the faith are there.
Yeah.
Right.
Death,
essentials.
Yeah. Death, resurrection, and deity. We're also told false prophets, false teachers going to come, going to corrupt the message. And we look at Islam. Interesting stuff here. Muhammad comes along. He agrees with us on all kinds of things that no one ever agrees with us on, right? So Islam teaches that Jesus is born of a virgin, right? I mean, not lots of people who aren't Christians would agree with us on the virgin birth. Muhammad comes along and he says, Jesus lived the most miraculous life in history. According to the Quran is filled with miracle stories. Jesus raised lepers from the dead. Jesus, he healed lepers. He raised people from the dead. He performed all kinds of miracles. And the Quran's even, the Quranic Jesus is kind of more miraculous in certain ways because he started preaching at birth. Jesus is born, he comes out, he starts preaching Islamic theology. So little baby Jesus there, sitting there and telling people about Allah. So you have that. You have Jesus is the Messiah, according to Islam, right? Jews don't believe, Jews who reject Christianity don't believe that Jesus is the Messiah. And even at the end, Allah raises him to himself. Allah doesn't allow Jesus to be killed. So he has a miraculous beginning, a miraculous middle, a miraculous end, according to Islam. And so what you have from Islam, what you have from Muhammad goes something like this. You believe in Jesus? Hey, so do I. You believe he was born of a virgin? So do I. You believe he performed all these miracles? So do I. You believe he's the Messiah? So do I. In fact, there are only three things that we really have to disagree on. He didn't die on the cross. He didn't rise from the dead. He never claimed to be divine. So the only three things that you have to deny are the core elements of the Christian gospel. And that's where you look and you say, that doesn't look like a coincidence, right? That doesn't look like a coincidence. The core of the Christian gospel that we read about in the New Testament, the main message, the very fundamental, the point you just can't compromise on, Muhammad says, I'll agree with you on everything except those. And that's stuff where I look at it and I go, that's not coincidence there. That's something, that's
spiritual influence. Yeah. Absolutely. I would totally agree with that. So we've only got a couple minutes left in the show, three. So, folks, we're listening to David Wood, and he is an expert on Islam, and he'll be in the studio for the rest of the week, except for Friday. He's flying back. Let's get to Marilyn from Nampa. Marilyn, welcome to the show.
Thank you for taking my call. I was interested in hearing what David had to say, and back in the early 90s, I was pretty active in a ministry to the Mormons, and I remember reading in the local newspaper an article by Gordon Hinckley, former President Gordon Hinckley, that he had visited in the Middle East and found that there was a great deal of similarities between Islam and Mormonism. In fact, he called them bedfellows. And as I have been listening to you, I certainly see those similarities. In light of where we are today and with a potential Mormon president, I'm just wondering how all that fits in and how I guess sees that. Will that affect us? I don't know, maybe I'm asking too many questions here on this one, but would like to hear him comment about that, the similarities between Mormonism and Islam.
Well, there are certainly similarities, and I've even heard some people refer to Islam as medieval Mormonism.
Right.
And also, some Christian apologists don't refer to Islam as a separate religion, right? So you have Judaism and Christianity and Islam. They actually view Islam as a Christian cult. So they actually would put it, if they were to put it in a category, you'd have your other religions, right? You'd have Judaism, Christianity, Hinduism, and so on as religions. But then you have your cults of certain religions. And they would actually put it alongside Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormonism, and so on in the cults category. They would put Islam as a cult, specifically because it's characteristic of cults to place a lot of emphasis on Jesus, but to deny some or all of the core Christian doctrines. And if you look at Islam, that's exactly what Islam did. Islam just did it, way before, before Mormonism and so on came along. But if you kind of think about, you can think about Islam, and we're about out of time, so I'll just have to wrap this up quickly. If you think about Islam in Mormonism in worldly terms, right? So not even thinking about whether Christianity is true or false. What would the founder of, his own little group do? Well, do a lot to satisfy his own desires. And so you look, and that's exactly what, Joseph Smith and Muhammad did. But at the same time, considering it from a Christian perspective where, false teachers, false prophets, their job is to kind of corrupt the gospel, and they do the exact same thing there as well. So yes, certainly plenty of similarities. I'm sure Matt could talk a lot about the Mormon. Maybe we'll talk about that tomorrow since we're out of time.
Hey, Marilyn, we are out of time, so got to get going, okay?
Thank you very much.
All right, Marilyn. Well, God bless. Thanks for calling.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Hey, folks, the music's going. I've been talking with David Wood, and David and I will be at the Crossing Church on Wednesday. That's out there in Nampa at 7 p.m. David will be speaking on Islam. You can bring your best questions, and hope to see you there. He'll be out there on Wednesday night. And Dave, thanks for coming in the studio.
All right, good to be here, man.
And we'll be back in, Lord willing, tomorrow. God bless everybody. We'll see you. Bye.
Want more? Go online now to carm.org. CARM, the Christian Apologetics Research Ministry. Read Matt's articles on hundreds of topics. Enroll in up to 3 online schools which will take you to the next level and beyond in your knowledge of the Christian faith, theology, apologetics, and critical thinking. Interact on the forums. Download past radio shows, interviews, and debates. And for a limited time, request a free book specially chosen by Matt Slick. That's carm.org. We'll see you next time on Matt Slick Live.